This episode of the MSP podcast is brought to you by Big Tex Outdoors. Everything you could possibly need for your firearm. If he doesn't have it, you probably don't need it. And PHLster holsters. Can't do a sub 5-second fast drill? We'll get a PHLster holster. If you still can't, well, at least you know it's not the holster's fault. And primary and secondary, the definitive source for the armed professional and the responsible citizen. Quit your bitching about all the rules and get better. Hey guys, welcome back to the MSP podcast, the self-reliant podcast. Why do I say self-reliant instead of like the 2A lifestyle? Well, it's more than just about training with your GATS guys. It's martial arts, it's nutrition, it's health, it's medical. It's all those things to get better because no one's coming to save you. Super honored to have my friend Chuck Pressburg on the podcast today. Per the norm, because I always do a horrible job on introductions, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, my friend. And so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a 26 and a half year Army veteran. Came in the Army around 90. Went directly to the Ranger Regiment after my training pipeline. Served a total of about 10 years in the regiment in a couple different stints. Did 2 years in the regular Army in the 82nd, where I was a squad leader and a sniper section leader. Then I went over to USASOC and I served in a science and technology and R&D capacity where I did developmental testing of new technologies and then worked assisting in some acquisition programs over there. I was a founding member of the Asymmetric Warfare Group when it was activated. I went to AWG selection, the first selection, and went to the first training course for the Asymmetric Warfare Group. And I was the first green suitor, active duty Army guy, AWG person to deploy downrange to combat. Did 20-something months downrange with Asymmetric Warfare Group in the pre-surge and going into the surge. And then I went back to USASOC and I did 10 more years at USASOC, where I served in an operational capacity as well as acquisition capacities there as well.
Awesome. So pretty much around the horn in the Army there. And so you've been retired for how long now? A couple years
Just
now?
over 2 years.
Just over 2 years. Man, time flies.
Yeah, man. I got out on 1st of January of 2017.
Yeah. So one of the things that I had always, there's not a better word, but fascinated by the way you talk about training, really the way you talk about everything. And what appealed to me is how you break down everything to the minutia. Everything, every piece of kit, every training session, every round, every dry fire has some sort of building or fuckery going on with it, depending on how well you practice. How did you get like that? Because that's very much my style as well, of trying to break everything down and then build it back up. But you do it in this eloquence that we should all attain to. How did you get like that?
Some of it was discovery learning. And then a little bit of it was institutional. When I came in to the Army and I went to the Rangers, we were right there at the cusp of the dark days of the Clinton presidency. I came in, there were 18 divisions and almost 800,000 active duty soldiers. And in very short orders, and it was started under dividends were kicking in. We didn't need this army to fight the Russian bear, and they were going to hack and slash the defense budget and reduce the size of our force so that we could focus on domestic programs. And that is how President Clinton was able to achieve a budget surplus for the first time in our modern lifetimes. So that did not come without a cost. We lost everything for about 8 years. There was no ammunition to train. There was no fuel for our vehicles. There was no spare parts. We were absolutely a paper tiger. And I did not feel it as bad when I was in the Ranger Regiment. I was quite spoiled and didn't know it. I just thought that's what life was like. But when I got to the 82nd, the cold, stark reality of going from 18 active duty divisions down to 10 and massive cuts in our defense spending. They hit me like a ton of bricks. And when I was a sniper, we could not train. We were getting 60 rounds of sniper ammunition per month for our M24 sniper weapon systems. That was the M118 special ball that we were allocated. There was just no ammo to train, so we had our training resources became precious, and our time, if we were crafty about it, was actually quite plentiful because there was no higher headquarters pushing us to go out in the field and sit out there for a month because there was no ammo or fuel to do anything. So there was a lot of Nintendo 64, some GoldenEye on the Cube or whatever going on. That was CQB training was GoldenEye, and then for sniper training, it might be opening up the fire escape and going out on the roof and locking and clearing the guns, pulling the bolts, and actually trying to mill human beings that were walking across the parking lot from their car to brigade headquarters, and seeing how fast you could get a mill relation formula on a real human being that was moving. And that was training because there was no rounds to fire. And so when I started to get training resources back again, I never forgot how precious each individual round expended was, even when I had more again. So that's why breaking things down, I can't afford to shoot 6 rounds out of my gun on a bill over and over and over and over again if it's the draw and presentation that's dorking me up.
Yep.
I can save 5 bullets on every repetition of that drill if I do one-shot draws, but I have to understand that it is that draw to first shot that is my deficiency, not the recoil management portion of that drill. And that's why breaking it down, like you said, the micro skills, that's why that is so important. For a guy that only has a certain amount of ammo, you get 6 reps instead of 1 if you break the drill down. Or you can just continue to fire 6, reload, fire 6, reload, fire 6. If you ain't poor, go for it. I guess there's still some other benefit of just doing it over and over and over again, but it's not the most efficient way to get to your goal.
Agreed. People ask me all the time about, like my standard from concealment, doing in 2 seconds and stuff. And like, well, how do you do it? I'm like, pay attention to your draw and pay attention to your second shot, right? Because you get past that second shot, you're golden. The rest of it's just doing this. Yep. You can't do the first and second, and, I love these guys. Well, I've been doing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what's the data tell you? And they're like, you mean the first shot and the last shot? I'm like, no, man, the second split, the third split, what's that telling you? If 3, 4, 5, and 6 are good to go, you need to start looking at 1 and 2. And like, and guess what? Now you can do 3 practices, right? If you're only shooting 2 rounds, and it still applies to the bill, Yep. So you got all these resources back, right? And that had some. I just find it amazing, dude. That dry fire was part of your practice schedule, So you get to this point, then comes GWAT and whatever unit you were with at the time, and more training resources and all that other stuff. Did you still maintain that type of discipline? Even when you had the resources available to you? And if so, why?
I mean, there were definitely times that I wanted to dry fire stuff just to make sure that I was sorting some things out. But yeah, my round counts did go up significantly. I never, prior to, the Bush years where they were making it rain money, I had never taken a can, and a can is 1,000 rounds of ball. I never taken a can and had a can to myself or whatever. But by the end of it, by 07, 08, 2010, I would show up to the range in the afternoon right after lunch, and I wasn't going to walk away from that range till the can was empty. So if I cracked 1,000, I was shooting 1,000 at a sitting, and that was in the afternoon. If I made the conscious decision, I'm going to shoot my pistol, I was launching 1,000 rounds out of the pipe. And that wasn't necessarily efficient either but I had the resources to do that. And it seemed to be more fun than dry firing. I didn't have to have as much guessing about accountability. Whether you're
Mm-hmm.
using a pasty or a reduced size little tombstone that you've made that you have taped on your wall, you still have to hold yourself accountable visually to what happened when the gun went click during your dry fire, or
Yeah.
else you're going to get out, start your live fire, and realize that you were faking the funk.
Yeah.
And those dry fire reps were not good for you because you weren't checked in to the confirmation of your sights and doing that follow through during the trigger press. If you're shooting live rounds, you don't have to actually be as switched on because you're going to get the feedback from the target. Of course, that hurts you when things start getting really, really fast in real time. And when the targets have clothing on them and the bullets disappear, you're not getting visual check-in capability unless the target is reacting, and now you're incorporating their physical reaction time to the stimuli that you've put on them and all these other things. If you just saw where your sights were when the gun went off, you would know whether that's a high probability of a critical hit on that human being or not. By throwing ammo at the problem, it was actually a crutch. And so there was always times where I wanted to get back into dry fire because it was holding me accountable in every aspect of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we associate dry fire with gun handling, if you're pulling that trigger and hearing that click, it's giving you data points, and you need to be paying attention to those data points.
Right.
So that's why dry fire has consistently come back. There's also places where dry fire is appropriate and live fire isn't. There was a lot of balancing. So this is the coalescence of human performance and shooting. There were these physical therapy balancing tools like wooden boards with rollers under them,
Yeah.
and you stood on
Yep.
them to like practice firing your micro muscles or
Yeah.
whatever. Everywhere in our physical therapy areas that had those type of apparatus, there was dry fire targets on the wall and
Yeah.
blue guns just laying around. So you could actually get on and work physical therapy, micro muscle stuff, and while you're standing there, try to present a gun and just look at the sights on the blue gun and see what your wobble zone is looking like while you're firing. In the event that you ever have to shoot somebody on a balanced log, I guess, or something. But um,
Or
so and
balance.
so
Yeah. Exactly.
I would do high heart rate dry fire also,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having to run all the way down to the range and do some stuff in full kit or whatever. I could um, knockout burpees or what have you back in like the team room area, and then jump up from a set, snatch the gun, and actually do a dry fire rep with one of my real firearms cleared out on a pasty on the wall or something like that. So incorporating the dry firing into the PT so that you are having to activate the controls on that weapon under a physically stressful environment. It just seemed to me that type of stuff was better in dry fire than getting all hot and sweaty and jacking yourself up on the range during live fire.
No, I dig it, man, and that's interesting. So I've got one of those balance boards here, and I do that same type of dry fire. Uh, that's the whole thing. Like, Rob Leatham, the best dry fire is on the range with live ammo. That's and God bless the guy, because if you got that much ammo. But that being said, if you want to fire those micro muscles that you're talking about, one mistake on the balance board during live fire could mean a round leaving the range, and that's no bueno. That's no bueno. So yeah, I actually never thought about that different. That's awesome. So moving on from there, right? So you're retired. You kind of built up, this all this experience and training different people in both plentiful times and right. And I personally know this. I think anybody else out there that follows you knows you are still constantly striving to get better, right? So the two questions there are why you've been there and done that to a high level of skill with a metric that, well, we won't talk about that, but it's a significant metric for you, right? For anybody, I should say. Why are you still trying to get better, and how are you still trying to get better?
So after I retired, and a lot of guys do this, if they were PTing at a really high level, shortly after they retire, it's like they take a vacation and then they never come off the vacation in terms of their lifestyle. They let their diet change. They let their physical activity change. If they were a shooter, they don't go to the range as much anymore, and they use excuses like, well, I don't have free ammo anymore, or whatever. And what you see is an immediate degradation of where that person was at when they had the motivation to perform at a high level due to their job or their career. Mm-hmm. And then they accept mediocrity. And how far down from the apex of their human performance they allow themselves to fall is up to the individual. I suffered the same thing. I gained, 50 pounds and was not shooting and suffered a tremendous amount of degradation in my human performance. And a good friend of mine, it was my first class that I had taught after months and months and months and months of not being on the guns. And I taught this class, and I dorked up a couple drills. And a close friend of mine gave me an AAR, and he was like, man, the class, the drills, the everything was spot on. I will let you know that I was disappointed in your physical performance. Based on your resume, I stepped on that range thinking that you need to be able to perform at this level, and I didn't see that from you. Mm-hmm. And it might have been good enough, and maybe other students didn't know it, but I know how people with your resume shoot, and you are not representing your resume well. And that hit me very hard.
Yeah.
And I realized that I can't just say, well, because I don't have that job anymore, I don't need to be that good anymore. If I'm walking around saying I used to do that job, I used to be that good. I think that at some point, depending on what you're teaching, if you are teaching decision-making, tactics, critical thinking, under fire, things like that, that your ability to physically do the job is not as important as somebody that is teaching the fundamentals and has to practically apply them. And allow me to say, to give an analogy, because there's people like, that dude's giving himself an out for not being a performer. You can't show me a strength coach that supports an NFL football team that can currently play football. Can't show me a head coach, a defense coach, or an offensive coordinator that can actually play football. They are no longer able to do that job, but they have experience and knowledge that they can impart to those that are still fit and athletic enough to be able to do that job. So there is value to hearing what these people have to say, but it might not be in an example format. It might not be, watch me, now you do. It has to be a different style. Coordinators are teaching tactics of how to play that game of football, and they're over the hill. I would never disrespect Ken Hackathorn and be like, motherfucker can't shoot anymore, fuck him. Like, that's just like, who does that? I mean, I guess the internet does that, but
in mass.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean that if I am, a fire-breathing 25-year-old that's trying to squeak this much more human performance out, then I'm going to choose to go to Ken's class to find that last bit of human performance. I might go to some other dude's class that is really pumped up and motivated about being on top of his game, and he's going to motivate me to get that last little bit of human performance that I know is inside of me somewhere.
Right.
So you got to go to the right instructors to get the right items that you want off their buffet based on what you need to be a better shooter.
Right.
But I am not Ken. I am not in my 60s. I'm in my 40s, and I'm still capable of a significant amount of physical performance. And so having that thrown in my face has put me back on a track of ascending to a higher level of physical performance. And I started that with self-practice, And now I'm taking that to the next level by applying outside stressors. Um, when I was at work, I competed because everything was type A's trying to outdo one another.
Right.
So we were essentially setting up stages, which we called stress shoots. We were setting up stages of a match, but there wasn't any practice score or whatever. We came up with a time, like, all right, guys, it's going to be fastest time, and we're going to do time subtractions for D's and C's and fuck hit factor. But there was an accuracy metric. If you didn't shoot well, we were going to add time on there, and the fastest time won, kind of deal. And those were done daily and weekly, and you pushed yourself to execute. When I left work, I no longer had those types of group sessions where we were throwing what we had done during our individual practice together, bringing it all together, and then being told you need to execute all of these things that you've been working on together right now. Mm-hmm. And so I've got to go compete. I've got to go get out there and find another group of people that are setting up stages that are going to allow me to check back in and apply all of the individual training days lessons that I've learned and bring them all together. And all right, now it's time to perform. It's not time to practice. It's time to perform. Perform on demand in front of other people and execute. So I'm seeking out the competition environment to give me those diagnostic testing days, if you will, that are then going to feed right back into my personal training sessions.
Cool. So I want to backtrack a little bit and then get back to the competition thing and how it relates to speed and accuracy and human cognition and things of that nature. So there's, as you well know, you can say one thing and two sides of the argument can take the same thing you said and come to completely different
Talk about some confirmation bias, right?
Dude.
Holy moly.
Dude, so Caleb, I think you've met Caleb Giddings, man. He said it was perfect, man. It was the Rorschach test for everybody. You came in thinking what you wanted to think and you saw what you wanted to saw. Here's the thing. It was a 5-minute video. Watch the whole goddamn video. I mean, you saw me pop in there on the YouTube. I'm like, that is exactly not what he said. You know? So in the same type of thing, if someone only listened to a snippet of what you said, which seems to be, the MO of the internet lately, you're not giving it out for people not to demo at a high level either, right?
No,
you said that.
Certainly not. But again, it is based on the course material or what they're teaching. There's going to be a time where I am not going to be able to do a 300-yard rifle shoot, prone, sprint to 200, drop into kneeling sling supported, sprint to 100, and fire standing offhand on some type of target for time, mm-hmm. and be able to beat everybody in the class. That's not going to happen. Like at some point, I'm not going to be able to beat my entire class in a 300-yard foot race rifle drill.
But you can show them the technique, which leads to the efficiency, which leads to the speed, right?
Correct.
And that's the thing you talked about. Ken, who is obviously one of the founders, basically, of all this shit we do with a pistol, anyway. But every physical activity, in my opinion, is a combination of technique, speed, and strength. Right? Depending on what sport you're in, is how that directly applies. While that offensive coordinator or line coach may not have the speed and strength anymore, he may still have the technique to which you can apply your speed and strength, right? Because no matter how strong or fast you are, without that proper technique, you're only going to get so far. And that's what the demo is for.
Exactly. And I just kind of want to mature into like an old ass Yoda, where it's like,
there it is.
Man, dude can't even walk. But at this exact moment, he can execute near perfect technique, and that still creates an overall performance that's pretty respectable. Even when everybody looks and says, man, if I saw anything that was not right about that demo, it was just the lack of athleticism based on his age or physical disability or whatever, not because he hasn't done a draw in a month and he dorked up defeating his retention or something like that. The
Right.
things that matter that I can still be proficient in, I need to be proficient in always.
Exactly. Exactly. So, referring back to that little internet step that you did before that set the blaze afire. By the way, brother, there's no such thing as bad media to a degree. You know what I
There's no
mean?
such thing as what?
As bad media, as bad press to a degree, right? And more people know who Chuck Pressburg is that did not know who he was before because that thing got circulated around. So it was an interesting social experiment of what went on there. But I digress. Let's get back to competition, man. You could set up your own little speed stages, invite over a buddy, yada yada. Why are you doing competition? Why do you want to get with all the USPSA gamer fags? And that's a colloquial term of endearment, y'all. So, because I'm
because there are some things that are unique to gaming that if I want to compete and just as an alpha male want to do well, like you can't, at some point, if you're going to play somebody else's game, you cannot ignore their rules. Yes, I can shoot duty gear. Yes, I can do this other stuff. But if I run up and plant into the box and make sure that both of my feet are set and I'm squared up, and then I represent from the ready back out to in order to shoot, and all of those things cost me time, whereas the competitor is looking at the fault lines in the box and planning exactly where and how he's going to be rolling his feet and already having the gun up and presenting to shave time off. And I learned that from Mike Voigt. We were shooting a drill and we had multiple steel bays that had like Rogers style shooting steel.
yeah.
And the drill was to actually clean the bays from left to right, every single bay. So it was essentially like 6 or 7 shooting boxes. And I beat all of my peers, but Voigt's time was a couple of seconds faster than mine.
Right.
And Mike looked at what I was doing and he was like, bro, you are setting up like a pillbox, man. You're getting in there, getting comfortable, wiggling your ass around a little bit, punching the gun out, and then you're making the gun scream. He goes, watch me run this again. And as soon as he was clear from a sector of fire where he could start to engage stuff, plates that were close enough that he knew that he could make those shots on the move, he was dropping those steel plates while in movement and decelerating. And everybody else I saw was run, stop, shoot, run, stop, shoot, run, stop, shoot. Does that apply to combat? Not directly because of how the footwork and how the mechanics were going. But I'm not going to see those opportunities for increased efficiency unless I'm around people that are more efficient than me. So I have to just immerse myself in this culture of really, really efficient, high-end performing human beings, and then just take the things that apply and apply them to my shooting style, and then discount some other things that are specific to that game. And when I say discount them, discount using them for training for a real fight, but absolutely continue to use them in that game and know the difference so that I'm still placing well, which is keeping me motivated to come back and train again. I'm not going away boo-boo lip and butt hurt at the end of the match. So some of it is even a mind game for myself. Like I want to, if I'm going to play the game, I want to be good at the game. So I need to understand the game's rules and I need to apply the efficiencies that are going to make me excel in that game. And if they also make me excel in preparing for a fight, I'm taking them back to my tactical training as well. So
yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, we've had conversations. I remember seeing that one video. I think you sent me the video about you shooting that one stage, and it was first person, so I couldn't really see a lot. But not everything is about shooting on the move and doing jailbait splits, right? It is, for example, what Mike's probably saw in yours, and I was just talking to Rob, who owns the Softway. It's a apparel company, and he was doing TikTok, which is a classifier where you walk into the box, your gun's unloaded, you got to pick up the magazine rack, and then you hit 4 targets in a clock type formation with the no shoot in the middle, reload, do it again. And what he was doing was walking into the position, picking up his gun, standing back up, shooting, bending back down, reloading, getting back up, blah, blah, blah. And all I said to him was like, dude, walk in low, stay low. So you're not constantly doing this setup. Not my lane, but I would think that going in low, staying in low without standing up like that pillbox would have some time benefits, even in a combat situation. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. One of the reasons why criticism of blind speed comes from me is because people naturally accelerate when they're in mortal danger. Yeah. There is a subliminal, subconscious thing. We see it in every dash cam or body cam video that we see with police, except for some that are extremely successful. And you can tell that person, for whatever reason, disconnected their potential mortality with their desired lethality, and they separated the two, and they took the time that they needed to check in with their sights, prep their trigger if necessary, and to break shots that were going to be critical. That is very atypical of people. Even seasoned Timmies, they don't they don't acknowledge sometimes that happens. One of the few that did was JD from Northern Red. He talked about not aiming with perfect sight picture in real life. He was very honest about minute of a man in a room and just getting shots out early, like extremely early. I will tell you that JD's experience does not mirror that of myself and some of my peers. I have consciously aimed even as rounds were passing pretty close by me, because I've managed to mentally and cognitively disassociate the fact that I'm about to die with the task that is at hand. Other people don't do that. So getting shots out fast is like this magical or mystical force field around you. If you're returning fire and you're returning fire quickly, then you're posturing and convincing yourself that you're not going to get hurt. And so it negatively affects your throttle control. And you see marksmanship in real use of force cases go to crap because of this desire to start making your gun go bang to protect yourself. And so that is been kind of my concern about people not showing proper throttle control kind of sooner. You know what I mean?
Right. So I'm kind of interested in hearing your opinion on that, right? Because it has been said, I have concurred with this, that one of the reasons why people who get into those situations and they just start going full Ricky Bobby on the trigger, and they have subsequently shots that miss, it's because they've never been there before. Their CNS, their consciousness has never been there before, so they don't know how to control it. So not to be a counterpoint, but shooting fast in practice and getting there while not in a critical situation might help you when you are in that critical situation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. We mentioned it in the PNS modcast. The only problem is we're taking a not superhuman competitor, but a practiced competitor. We're gonna take them as an example. I'm assuming that guy or gal is absolutely seeing sights and tracking sights while performing all these high level tasks. The problem is now a training to kill people. When you apply the criticality of accuracy to killing human beings, and we talked about this with our boy Kyle. Kyle was used to alpha is success. Had he shot things smaller than alpha? Yeah, he had shot partials. And he knew, because of the tan black or white brown or head box, he knew what the scoreable area was always and that visual input allowed for that throttle control. But when you're shooting at a human being's heart inside of their thoracic cavity, in that moment of danger, you are going to see the silhouette of the human being, and it is going to look very, very much shape-wise like the sight pictures that you have had hundreds of times, and hundreds and thousands of times that you have shot. You received no penalty for putting it anywhere in the alpha. But there are things in the alpha that are not going to shut a human being down. And that is the only downside that I've seen to exceptional human performance derived from competition, is I just need to tweak their brain just a little bit to this area of the alpha is where the heart is located. I need you keeping them up in here, not in here. And as soon as the gamer's like, okay, got it. And then bam, 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 bam. And because they know how to throttle control, they just didn't know they needed to throttle control. Right. And so as soon as I change their scoreable area and tell them what the new scoreable area is, it's like beep, 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 beep. The competitor's ballistic computer checks in and he's like, yep, roger that. And now all of that real-time sight processing and all of that, what can I get away with? It's the difference between guys that throw more C's than other guys as they're coming up through the ranks. When you start to see that higher alpha with times not really dropping off, now you know that dude is that competitor is really at his higher end of his game with his cognitive abilities. He's really slowing down reality and getting into that matrix shit. And I don't think Timmy's realized how much those dudes are really seeing and how much those dudes are really. It is not chance that those bullets are landing in the alpha. There's some deliberate shit going on that in that guy's head seems like slow motion. Right. And Timmy just don't get that. Right. That competitor is operating at that level.
Right. Right. That's an interesting, I don't know the word I'm looking for, observation though. And I'm actually going to agree with that depending on the size of acceptable level of accuracy that you are shooting at, regardless if you're going fast or slow, you are going to kind of superimpose that. So if all you do, because the audience knows, man, I hate B8s. I told you that. I told Blowers that, but I shoot them because I hate anybody being better at me at something, right? But one of the cognitive things that I did to see if I could directly apply that was, when I did that homage to you, the no-fail build drill on a B8. And I learned some interesting things there. I could have said, well, I just did it in 2 seconds and I got a couple of 7s in there. I could have said that's okay, but that wasn't the point. So you're saying that the wiring or the programming is if someone who only shoots a 6x12 or 7.5x11, whatever those metrics are for that, that's what they're going to see. But if they see a smaller area and they practice to that, that's what they're super going to impose when they get in the situation. And you know what, man? I don't know enough to know if I agree or disagree with that, but I'm kind of leaning with that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, sir.
I used to argue with Pat Rogers about his EAG qualification target because the scoreable area was inside of the multicam and you couldn't see it. So you were having to aim center of minute of a man in order to get your rounds, but you were just being
slightly below the sternum, right? Yeah.
For rounds that went out. And in training, people say, well, you're not going to see the human heart in combat. Right, I get it. But as I'm trying to get students to increase their speed, I need them to know what is a good wobble zone and what is not a good wobble zone. And so if I'm going to shoot on IPSC, I will absolutely black marker out the alpha when I'm training. Because when I'm running and then decelerating and raising the rifle, I want to kind of start to build up a mental database of what the EOTech or T2 or whatever sight reticle, what it's doing. And okay, at this infinity symbol / figure 8, if it is edge to edge inside of the Sharpie lines of the alpha all day long, just get on it. If it is going outside of that, I need to change my firing solution, work on more shock absorbers in the legs, pulling the gun in tighter, closing the distance to the target, if all alpha is the only acceptable answer for that solution, and I'm not accepting good enough.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, you just got to throw it out there when the lines aren't there. If you're practicing to the lines and then you remove them, hopefully you visually cataloged what that smaller wobble zone looks like, and you're going to end up with a high level of accuracy performance while still maintaining your speed. So I'm a huge fan of very well contrasted hit zones for training.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you
Mm-hmm.
can get away with based on your sights.
Right.
And then launch them, get them out there.
Yeah. Then my buddy Gabe White does the no fail build drill and does it in 2 seconds from concealment. And I'm like, this motherfucker right here. Right. But that's what it's about. It's about breaking your glass ceilings. Right. Nobody can, I mean, a 2 second build drill from concealment on a B8 in all black. That's sickness. And that's what I'm working on now. Because I'm thinking, 3 seconds is a good thing. People can achieve this. Not bad. Seeing everything, 26, 27 splits with a good, don't need to get more than that. And then this motherfucker goes out and does and takes my own 2 second from concealment. All right. And then does that to me. But I think it's like this. I was both like this guy right here, but then I was stoked because now I know it's humanly possible, and I'm going to get after it. And I'm going to get after
absolutely. It. And I'm the same way. Blowers has come in and shot some of the DeFore stuff, strong hand only, and weak hand only at some really, really respectable times. And, my numbers are just as arbitrary as everybody else's numbers. 3.5 seconds for the no-fail shot drill was a time standard that I thought that people using duty striker-fired pistols would still have enough time to properly prep the trigger and break the sear clean to make this precision-style shot at 25 yards. Obviously, either people that have overcome any type of recoil anticipation pre-movement of the firearm, like totally cured it, or they just weren't afflicted with it in the first place, or they have the equipment set up, trigger, whatever, that is not as much of an issue. They need less time to prepare the gun for it to go off, and then coalescing it, or getting the gun to go off without moving it. They don't need that 3.5 seconds. They can do it in much, much less time, and they can do it in much less time consistently. Yeah. So now it's another metric for me to go towards. I do have a significant pre-ignition flinch. It's bad. It is very bad. And most of the things that I do with a handgun are figuring out how to work. It's almost like how to work out around an injury. Yeah. Like, I have this affliction, and so how do I still get outcome-based performance despite my affliction?
Yeah.
And all of my firearms training is around not moving the gun before it goes bang.
So that's interesting. I have a theory about that, which is going to not to solve the flinch, because like you've said before, you've shot 1 million+ rounds. Ain't nobody going to figure it out, in a heartbeat, right? But that being said, working around the injury or something to that effect, I've always said, like, on your no fail at 3.5, right, and various other things, whether it be a build drill from concealment, blah blah blah. Everybody concentrates on this, when in actuality, at least for the drill, it's this. Getting the gun out and on target gives me so much time to figure out my aiming solution, right? It's not about the 1 second shot to target. It's about this 0.75, and then the aiming begins to have more time to solve it. Is that one of the workarounds you've done? Because you've got a pretty quick draw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So at work, all shooting stuff was broken down into marksmanship and gun handling, and you should disconnect the two. We talk about the hardest shot you ever have to make is a shot after major gun handling, first shot off after the draw, first shot after a slide lock reload specific to the L-Pres. And so this is drilled into our heads. But when you look at students at like my classes or people that take videos, it's like, ooh, 25-yard shot. That's going to be a heavy marksmanship intensive thing. And you will see them go down like Miss Daisy and grab the gun and slowly pull the gun up and slowly push the gun out. The biggest one that you see guys do that on is the 25-yard slow fire, because they have 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And instead of getting an extra rep of drawn presentation, they draw uber slow. And so they're cognitively connecting slow aiming, slow trigger press with slow gun handling, and they shouldn't be. Like you're saying, if you take 1.5 seconds to get the damn gun in front of your face, you now only have 2 seconds to milk that trigger and align them sights.
Yeah.
If you have that gun in front of your face in 0.8, you now have 7 more tenths of a second to do some more aimy stuff or some more pulley of the trigger stuff.
Yeah.
So quit drawing like Miss Daisy and maybe work on breaking that last 5% of sear on your trigger a little bit slower, so you don't go to Shanksville. Apply that 0.7 to your trigger press, not to your draw, man. I agree 100%, and that's why I go so heavily against beating up on arbitrary numbers for the arbitrary number. You need to have everything that got you to the arbitrary number as a training metrics, and then you need to apply the real situation that you're in. And it was actually because I was getting frustrated that I wasn't seeing my sights well enough in 0.95, and I was at a level of accuracy that I didn't consider to be acceptable. And so when I saw Tim hit the A box on a face and slow down to a 1-2, or Miklik do something else and he did it in a 1-1-3, I was like, oh, so these guys are decision making. They're pulling the gun out, and then they're like, oh yeah, I got 0.7 here, but I need a little bit more time right here before they let it go. And so therefore the 1 second wasn't the end of the world for them. It was going to be an accurate shot. And if they had taken Miss Daisy, that would have been a 1.7 instead of a 1.13.
Yep. You got to understand what modulation you need to throw in there to make an appropriately accurate shot. Like for example, the fast test is a common one, right? 1 second will get you famous on Instagram. But if that's your goal in the fast drill, you're going to fail more than you accomplish. Take the whole 1.5, right, to get a good grip, because it's not just about that first shot. It's about having the proper grip so you can get a sub 5 second split to the head box. You got to think about all this stuff, because, riding with the cougar ain't the answer all the time, right? And I think when you start to fully embrace that, right, your slow becomes everybody else's fast. That's awesome. All right, brother. So we're coming up on 47 minutes here, man. I'm trying to keep these to about an hour so that people don't start nodding off and misrepresenting what we say on the internet. Anyway, so now we get to the portion of get it off your chest, right? So what out there in the industry, your experience, competition, whatever you want to, what do people need to start doing to get better? Or what do they need to stop doing to get better? Or whatever you want to talk about. Don't talk about your neighbors. Nobody cares. So.
I am not happy with the student base of our industry and their metrics for or their desire to train with certain people based off of various metrics. I think there are way too many people, and for y'all that don't know, there are a few, it's literally in the 100. There are a few hundred training junkies in this country that have trained with everybody or want to train with everybody or go to multiple training courses a year. They're a very, very small nucleus. And then there's a very larger pile that's probably less than 3,000 that will even attend one course a year. Mm-hmm. So Jedi and myself and Noner and DeFore, we are fighting for the hearts and minds of this 3,000 people that are actually going to pay money to go to a course. Like, we're all fighting for the same students. We all say, oh, there's plenty of room in the training community and blah, blah, blah. That is true. And we argue amongst each other, put each other's techniques down or whatever, in this subconscious or deliberately conscious, depending on how shady you are as a human being, desire to try to take or get business for yourself, even if that means taking it from another. So if you are a quiet professional and you know what works and you know what right looks like, and you sit back and let the internet, your Goebbels, your propaganda masters, they are going to Pied Piper the people that don't know the difference between what right looks like, and they're going to Pied Piper them right off into their course. Mm-hmm. So there's a fine line that you have to run between putting down stuff that you've seen on Instagram that you know is flash in the pan, versus staying the course and just doing you well and hoping that people circle back around after they've had other experiences and they come to the light and they come back to your stuff. So that is probably my biggest frustration, is watching people spend money where you think that their money could have probably been better spent. But at the end of the day, the student population are the ones that are driving those metrics. They have a choice. This ain't communist Russia. This is capitalist America. And so these people have a choice on where they're going to spend their money. And they're choosing to spend their money on people that have beat you at the marketing game, at the business development game. Their business model is just more solid. I saw a meme yesterday on Insta that said, there is someone in your trader vocation that is less talented than you, but more successful because they believed in themselves more.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And I was like, oh, damn, resonate good. That is really true. If you're playing your business model conservatively, then you just have to expect conservative outcomes. And if you are all in self-promotion, doing whatever, and you're in it to win it, every day is about being controversial on the gram or doing whatever, and you're just pushing in every avenue of every way to expand your brand recognition, more people are going to sign up for your stuff. Whether you have substance or not, you're just a better marketer for your brand. And so I have really made a conscious effort to quit hating the player and hate the game, and just be like, man, you know what? Check writing, capitalist Americans, you guys get the instructors you deserve. So go forward, spend your money, man. Do what you're gonna do. If you stumble across me or whatever, you've got the time, you've got the money, and you want to train, that's cool. If you don't, I've got closed enrollment stuff going on behind the scenes all the time, and I've got a military retirement and VA disability check. I don't need. I am not going to die if somebody doesn't take my class. I'm not gonna. My lights are not gonna go off in my home if somebody doesn't take my class. So that kind of understanding, that woo-saw moment for me to just let it go, just let the shit go, man. Let the shit go. Let the industry do what the industry is going to do, and just be a better shooter and continue to mature as an instructor. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add to that a little bit. It's not a counterpoint to that, Chuck, but I'm gonna add to that of what I would like to see from people like yourselves. You go through this entire career being that quiet professional, which is awesome. I'm sure that you wish some professionals would be a little bit more quiet sometimes, right? that being said, there are so many guys out there like you that have amazing talent in instructing and getting people better, that look at marketing as evil, right? And I'm gonna say this out. I'm not calling out anybody because I've heard it from multiple people, but they have said You don't need to talk about what you teach or yourself. If you're good enough, your students will spread that message.
Yep.
But hold on. Here's the thing though. 25 years in sales and marketing, though your students, guess what? They're not marketers either. They don't know how to do that shit. I'm just saying. Right? If you've got an amazing message and an amazing talent and technique for teaching, why not tell more people? Right? Because the one thing my dad said to me, that he said a lot of shit to me that I didn't care about, but the one thing he said was this: for every fool you suffer, he's going to make 3 more. Right? So for every time we don't put up a counterpoint, whether it be through marketing or open debate or something like that, that guy who knows what he's teaching is wrong, and that's the true sin. He knows what he's teaching is wrong, but it's unique and different. That's why he's getting students in there. I think we do a disservice to those to students that want to learn, that want to get better, and there's such a high caliber of person like yourself out there that just more people need to be touched with that message so they can get out there and get better. So anyway, that's a side thing. I don't think I was disagreeing with you on that. I need more, so.
I struggle with it. There are instructors that are mainstream now that faked it until they made it.
Yeah.
And now they've made it. And Pandora's box is open, and you are not going to stifle that message. They are here to stay.
Right.
And their techniques are here to stay, and their ability to, cull from the herd and take students, it is here to stay. And if somebody had presented a cogent, unemotional argument against maybe that instructor's style or their lack of experience, and how what they're teaching isn't applicable, that maybe they wouldn't be at the national level of celebrity that they are now. And I start to think that way, and I'm starting to go down your road, Jedi, and then I come back to with the fanboyism and the cult of personality and the cliques and all of that. It's like, man, I'm just trying to get my business off the ground. I don't have time for 10,000 angry followers to start burning me in effigy because all I did was tell the truth.
No, I got it, dude.
Guy,
nope, I got it. Yep, I understand. And not the worst thing, but another detriment is that your own fanboys causing you grief. Jedi says this and blah 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 and SME and blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ.
Yep.
that's not what I said. Anyway, awesome, brother. Where can people find you? What are you teaching as far as the all of it, right? Because agencies watch this stuff too, I think. So anyway, where can people find you, brother?
So my website is co-aligned with Operational Detachment Source. The owner of Operational Detachment Source is one of my AIs. He's a protege of mine for many years. He went to Fight Club Class 1. So he hosts all my stuff and takes all my online bill pay. So when you go to presscheckconsulting.com, it's actually a redirect to the ODS site where they have a section in there that has my instructor bio, which I need to update. And then it has some courses on there that you can click to buy. And when you go to click to buy in the drop down, that's where the actual course dates and costs are at, based on whatever type of course it is. There's also a training calendar, which is actually linked to my phone. So if I get off the phone with somebody, Jedi's like, hey man, I want you in Northern Virginia, and we agree on the weekend of 9 September, I save it in my phone and it updates in real time on that calendar on Operational Detachment Source. So classes that are scheduled but are not yet available for checkout are on the calendar. The calendar is more accurate than the online store.
Okay.
As far as availability of what's coming up in the future. As far as menu of support, I teach Night Fighter, which is a nods and lasers program. It does some low light, it does some no light, it does some day shooting, and it is rifle and pistol based. And then I do no fail pistol, which is I hate using the term beginning, intermediate, advanced. It is an intermediate level handgun course. If you can shoot a B8 consistently around a 90, high 80s to 90 on a 25-yard slow fire, then you probably have mastered the fundamentals enough to attend the course. And that course is less about instruction of technique or human efficiency like the stuff that Jedi teaches. I will talk about grip when I see a grip that needs to be talked about, and I will talk about various coping strategies and my take on certain fundamentals, but they're not part of the POI. You're not going to hear day one, block one, let me tell you about the fundamentals, and me going through and talking about the fundamentals of marksmanship. It's about you taking your natural ability or your learned ability to fire a handgun, whether you learned it from duty, shooting enthusiasm, or practicing for competitive shooting. I want to take your skill set, what you brung, equipment and skill set wise, and I want to apply that to correcting human behavior physiologically, which has the second order effect of death. It is a course about stopping human beings from functioning mechanically using a handgun. That is what no-fail pistol is about. And it's about applying a firing solution that you're seeing in real time and deciding, can you make the shot from where you are? And if you can't, what you need to do to get a firing solution that you're seeing and processing visually and have a near 100% certainty that when you launch that round out of the barrel, that it is going to have the physiological effect on the suspect that you want. That's no-fill.
Awesome.
And then I'm moving into the rifle space this year. I have an intermediate carbine in Washington in May, and I have a designated marksman course in the fall in Iowa with Romper. No-fill, that is going to morph. Those are kind of my beta classes. That's going to morph into no-fail rifle, which is going to happen in 2020. A no-fail rifle is going to be your 200 yards and in multi-position shooting at very small scoreable areas. So essentially you're taking everything that you learned about no-fail pistol, but you're applying it to offset aiming points, knowing at any given distance and cant of your weapon where you need to put your reticle to drop a bullet in the X-ring because the size of the target you're shooting with your carbine is small. And so it's offset holdovers. It's holdovers, right. Hold unders, hold arounds. It's all about shooting really, really small stuff with your carbine at intermediate distances.
Awesome.
And that's what I got. And then closed enrollment, guys. I do hostage rescue for agencies. I do shoot house, regular shoot house CQB classes that are both open and closed enrollment. And then I do night vision, red dot, demo. I have a more increased menu of support for agencies that want to train as well, whether that be local with DHS funding, local with their own funding, or federal or military.
Okay. So, and obviously, if they just do a search for Presscheck Consulting, it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You're all over primary and secondary for the most part. So that's where they can find your medias and things of that nature. For those people that haven't heard of, Chuck before, I invite you to look at his body of work out there on the internet. You will learn a lot and probably hear some of the greatest rants in the history of man. So time for me to pay the bills. Hey guys, if you like this stuff, do me a favor. Don't be lazy. Subscribe, like. You can throw something in the comments. I don't really read the comments. My buddy Mike at Gray Thumb taught me that. If you want to train with me, go to modernsamuraiproject.com. Check out the classes tab. The great Mrs. Jedi just updated all that stuff. I can't believe I'm teaching that much this year. Super blessed in that. And then, hey man, guys, take everything that we have said, but more importantly, be good, stay safe, get training.